Welcome to another painting tutorial. This one will feature the Grey Knight Dreadknight from Games Workshop.
We're going to jump right into shading with a 2-to-1 mix of chainmail metal and chaos black. We're just trying to get the lower half of this pauldron covered and give a nice even transition there. On the bracer, we're going to attempt to put a dark transition into the crease between the contoured arm part and the extruded area on top with the sword. We're not very concerned about the actual top of the extruded portion because the gun will be sitting on top of that and it will be completely hidden. We're also going to hit the edge just to give us a little bit of separation between it and the highlights on the arm that we'll be sitting on. Now for the fist, we're just going to sort of hit the underside of it for right now, and we'll be coming back and doing some detailing later on to really separate out the fingers. On the arm, we'll be hitting the underside where the shadows will be, and a little bit on the inside where it will be up against the body. We're going to try and do a little bit of separation between the layers of panels on the arm itself, trying to give some separation between those levels of armor. Let's also fill in the area that's the ribbed hose portion of the joints. I'm going to shade the lower half of the knee pads just like we did on the pauldrons, and shade the underside of the harness. We'll also be getting in between these plates to try and give us a little bit of depth and separation. We'll do some slightly more heavy shading on the straps, as we'd like for them to stand out from the plate portions of the lower half. The most important portion of this arm at this point is going to be the fist. Almost everything else is going to be completely covered in other colored paints, so we're not as concerned with that. We're going to shade the sides and bottom of this armor panel on the legs. We're also going to be working on the round joint assemblies. We're going to be getting those and the area around them. It's okay to get a little bit of overspray here because we're going to be doing some very heavy washing on these areas to make them really stand out from the bright, shiny plates that we're going to be adding to them later. And really, for the most part on the legs, what we're doing right now is creating some general regions of alternating colors so that we get not one homogeneous color on the entire structure of the leg. We're really trying to create some highlights and shadows in places that make sense, but we're not fretting too much about the detail because we're going to be doing some weathering and some washing over it. Don't be afraid to go back over areas that you've gone over before that you don't feel are quite dark enough. But do be aware that you don't want to go too overboard with the shadowing. You definitely want to have some highlights in there too. I'm going to do a simple shade on the greaves here. The chest back assembly is the largest single part that we're going to be painting during this tutorial. First, we're just going to fill in the area behind where the pilot is going to be sitting. We'd like for him to pop out from the background, and it's easier to do that if it's much darker. We're going to be putting in a shaded edge around these areas under the arms that have exposed cables and hoses. We'll be applying some dark washes to those areas later. We're going to start shading the undersides and insides of the panels on the back. Also fill in this dark vent area. It's okay to shade on some of the upward facing panels to create some definition or at least a gradient on a large open surface. We're going to try and do a little bit of shading in some of these creases along the top area. For the most part, this main divide along the top of the model, we're going to be filling in with this shade color. Any recessed corners like these should be in shadow. going to shade the underside of the hip assembly now. Seeing as most of this area will be in complete shadow if the light source is directly overhead, we're going to make sure to get the entire area. We're going to shade the top side of this inverted box, as the upper platform will cast a shadow on that. We're going to shade the lower part of this main plate around the edges. We'll also be shading around the panel lines on the upper side of the hip assembly. And on the exoskeleton arms, we'll shade the areas around these joints. These are also going to be heavily washed, just like the inner workings of the legs. So we're not concerned about hyper detail here, just about getting some general areas of shade and highlight. Lastly, we'll just quickly hit the undersides of the tanks for the heavy incinerator. This has been part 2 of a tutorial on painting the Dreadknight.
Thank you for watching. Please tune in for the next installment, and as always, happy wargaming.